Welcome back to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Conrad Weaver, and I want to thank you for tuning in for another important conversation for first responders. My guest today is Chief Deputy Fire Marshal Don Brucker. He's a 39-year veteran in the fire service. He's a leader and someone who's been into some of the darkest scenes imaginable. But this conversation isn't just about his career. It's about the moment everything changed. It's about vulnerability and about grief, about realizing that being tough doesn't mean carrying it all alone. Don shared how a roll of paper towels unexpectedly triggered a wave of pain and how a mindfulness class and therapy helped him start a journey toward healing and personal transformation. It's a powerful episode, so be sure to stick around for the whole thing. If you are a firefighter, a dispatcher, a police officer, or just someone carrying the weight of life on your shoulders, this one's for you. So take a breath, be where your feet are, and let's dive in. Here's my conversation with Don Brucker. Well, Don Brucker, welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. It's been a long time coming. I've been wanting to have you on the show, and we finally able to work it out.
Yeah, Conrad, I appreciate being here. And yeah, I think on one of your episodes, I think you might even try to drop a guilt trip on me. And I think I texted you right away and said, I'm coming, Conrad, I'm coming.
So you've been kind of in the wellness space for your department, for your agency in the fire service. What was that moment for you when in your past that made you say, maybe this job's affecting me?
Well, I can tell you almost specifically, a couple cases stick out, and they were around the death of children. And and I had children when it was going on, and I don't think you relate to it because I don't think you want to relate to it until you relate to it. So I had to put down my initial work dog after 11 years, which was tough. I mean, it's sometimes, Conrad, it's tougher to put down a dog than to go to a funeral of a loved one. It's amazing. People that have dogs and people that have working dogs can really relate to that. So then I went out and got another one, right? So it was in the process of training that dog. And then the dog got all kind of seizure issues and had to be put down. It was another, like 2 years old. So I said, I'll never have another dog again as long as I live. Well, that's what I said, but then my family had a better understanding of probably, what I was talking about. So they kind of talked me into going to a store to see these puppies that were going to be on display from a rescue. I'm like, okay, I'll go, but do not try to talk me into getting this dog. Well, you can probably see where this story's going, right? So yeah. I get this dog, and he's a lab mix. We called him Asher. And Asher was a great dog. And actually, I think he helped save me from the mental stress of, the fire service and death and just, all kind of issues going around that. Well, here I go up to training at State College to do some fire investigation training. And right before I left, my daughter said, hey, did you notice that bump on Asher's back? I'm like, no, I didn't. So she sent me a picture of it, and I'm like, she goes, it actually got bigger since you left. I'm like, well, that's interesting. So I said, listen, babe, I'll be back tomorrow, and, we could talk about it then. Well, she calls me the next morning, and she's in a panic. And so long story short, we take the dog to the vets. I'm going to make a long story even shorter, a couple $1,000s in treatment. They still couldn't figure out what's going on. So I think it was around Memorial Day, I think it was. And I get up. He gets out of bed. He was laying beside me, gets out of bed, put him outside. He comes back in. He's just sluggish. My daughter's sitting on the floor with him. She says, can I give him his medicine? I'm like, yeah. So I give her medicine. I walk back out in the kitchen. And the next thing I know, she's freaking out, screaming at the top of her lungs, crying. I go running in there, and he's in the midst of this seizure. He didn't have seizure issues before. He had nothing wrong with him other than these couple bumps that were going on that we were trying to manage. So I sit down on the floor, and I just try to calm him. I'm trying to calm her. My wife comes down. She's crying. It's chaos in the house. I pull him up on my lap, sitting on the floor. I start petting him. I'm like, it's okay, buddy. It's okay, buddy. And he takes a couple breaths, and he's dead. And
wow,
that part there, Conrad, it was tough enough to deal with. But I think over the next couple weeks, it really started affecting me, because then I'm starting to relate that to other things. I come home one day. It's the craziest thing. It is absolute. And I listen to people on your podcast and I'm like, yeah, I'm not so different. I'm really not that different, right? I come home, I go into the garage, I put the garage door up, I come in, I'm kicking my boots off, go into the mud room. My wife yells down, hey, can you bring up some paper towels? And I'm like, absolutely. So I turn around, I grab this roll of paper towels off a shelf in the garage. I turn back around, and it felt, Conrad, it still baffles me. It felt like somebody took a sledgehammer and smacked me on the top of my head, and I dropped to my knees right there, and I sobbed for like 7 minutes straight. And I kept saying to myself out loud, and nobody even knew this was going on. I'm like, what the F is wrong with me? What the F is wrong with me? Never had anxiety, never had a panic attack, never. I think that's what it was. And you're going to be like, well, what's that connection? Well, what I didn't tell you is during this care of my dog, when all these things were on him and then they started to burst open, we were going through paper towel after paper towel after paper towel after paper towel, and it just snapped. And I got myself up. I dusted myself off, cleaned up, splashed some water on my face, walked up, handed my wife some paper towels, went up, took a shower, never said nothing to nobody for another probably year and a half. And then it come out one day when we were having just a family meeting, just sitting there talking, and they're like, we're concerned, like, what's wrong with you? And then we started working through it, and it all just kind of like presented itself. And I'm like, I have got to start. I got to make a difference. This is not me. I'm not happy with the person I am. And then when you start to realize that, right, when you realize the person that you are then affects other people around you, then it makes you feel even worse, right? It makes you feel even worse. So right before you were up here, we had another speaker come in, and he did a wonderful presentation. My wife went with me, and he's a national speaker, goes all around, and he has a good story to tell. And we come out of that training, and we get in my truck, and we're getting ready to drive out of the lot, and I can feel my wife staring at me. And I'm like, oh crap! Like, what is going on? Because this guy's raw. I mean, he don't hold nothing back. And he was talking about it, and I'm joking with her. I look over, what, babe, you want to go to Starbucks or something? She goes, no. I said, what? She goes, now I understand you. And let me tell you, Conrad, something. I felt extremely inferior at that point. I mean, really. It hit me like, man, gut punch, because I'm thinking to myself, if she just realized that, and I've been dealing with this for, a couple years anyhow, what else have I done to my family or people at work or other people? And that's when I'm like, yep, that's it. That's it. I'm going to keep moving forward. I found a 9-week course on, it was called Mindfulness for First Responders. I'm like, what the heck? You know what? I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose. So I signed up for it. It was at a therapy center, within about a half-hour ride of my house. So every Monday for 9 weeks. So we're into this mindfulness training, which was probably one of the best classes I've ever attended in my entire career. And they talk about everything, and they're really explaining everything. So about the second or third class in, they're like, hey, at the end, we need to collect your insurance card just so we can document, so we get reimbursed for the grant money. So it was nothing. They weren't submitting anything. And we're going to give you 3 free therapy sessions. I'm like, oh, hell no. Hell no. This big boy here is not going to therapy. I'm not going to talk to nobody about nothing. I don't need to. I don't want to. But as a couple more weeks went by, on them Mondays, I'm like, I felt myself relaxing. I had other police officers in the class, police chiefs in the class, a couple military guys, paramedics, and we all started to talk. And guess what, Conrad? Isn't it amazing that we can all relate to each other? It's amazing, which is a little conversation we'll do. And then I was
just when you start those conversations, you realize, hey, you're dealing with the same thing I'm dealing with, right?
Amen. And really, that's what it is. And it is that simple. It absolutely is that simple. I think I think first responders in general are very defensive when it comes to this topic. And I'm not going to say, I'm not going to quantify it or put percentages to it, because I don't know. But a lot of people that I've met in my journey are reluctant. So I'm like, listen, man, I did it. You should try it. What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
You know? And that's exactly how I talk with people and first responders. And the more you talk about it, and I know I hear a lot of your guests say the same thing, the more we talk about it openly with people, I think it makes it easier for us to process things. So the therapy that we're getting is through that conversation. It's amazing how it works. It is truly amazing. There's nothing hard about it other than taking that first step.
So
right?
in your area, as you were coming up through the ranks and going there was, what was the culture like around wellness and mental health?
Well, there was no culture. It was a lack of culture, the lack of attention to it. Nobody wanted to talk about it. I hate to say it because I hear it all the time. Suck it up, buttercup. Bury it. Don't worry about it. You're a, the sissy and some other adjectives that they would call people to do that. And I never really understood it because I was raised in a very I would call it meek and humble family. And I've stayed grounded my entire life. And I'm a very humble person. I don't ask anybody for anything. I don't want or need anything. I just want people to be well, because when you're well, and you can think about those times that you have those great conversations with your wife, your kids, anybody around you, how that makes you feel, because we were born to communicate. And that's what we need to figure out how to do. We're born to communicate. But here's what we do. Through these careers in first responders, we're catastrophe collectors. That's what we do, right? That's exactly what we do. And then what we do after all those catastrophes are stored in our head or our library, then we start to visit that library loss. And here we go, right? It's like spiral out of control. And I'm not saying everybody, but it's the commonality of it is people don't know how to deal with it. So they go out and they start doing some risque things or behaviors or tuning people off. I was that person, Conrad, where I would come home and I would be so just completely jacked off about whatever, things that were in my control, and I would just shut down. So what happens when you shut down and you come to your home, you come in there and you're not ignorant, you're not rude, you're not nasty, but you're quiet. Natural human reaction is for that person on the end of that quietness is, what did I do to him?
Right.
What did I do? And it's not fair. So, I've apologized to my family. I'm very confident that if you would call any of my family members and say, hey, is he the same person he was even 5 years ago? They're going to be like, oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, and it makes me feel, I didn't do it for them, Conrad. I did it for me, right? The question I ask people, I'm going to ask you, who's the most important person in your life? It's you.
Yeah.
And I think when you realize that and you start to address that, then everybody else around you becomes very important, and then it works the way it should.
Yeah. So going back to your going to the mindfulness class, what was it about that kind of was that aha moment for you within that class?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, it was just being where your feet are. And I use that saying a lot. Just be where your feet are. Be present where you're at. Because here's what we do, right? We get involved with all these things in our life and the things that make us mad, and we're worried about things that we have no direct control over. And at some point in time, you're going to hear a sound over your shoulder, and you're going to turn around, and there's going to be a big triaxle dump truck full of all the time that you wasted. All that time that you wasted, and you're like, I wish I had that back, and I wish I could apply that time in a positive manner. Because think about where you could be then, right? So I think when I started to realize about not worrying about everything around you, right? Worry about the person you are, being a good person, learning how to process things. Don't just triage things. And we talk about the backpack analogy in the trash can, and you can fill that trash can and file drawer up all you want. It's going to overflow. Then everybody's going to be walking on all your overflow and trash and files. What good is that? It's absolutely no good. So it just kept reinforcing it. And again, when we're there, I'm not afraid to speak, Conrad. Believe it or not, I'm not a shy kind of guy, right? So we're having this conversation in this group, and I think there's about 12 of us there. And again, police chiefs, police lieutenants, sergeants, we all just started talking, right? We all started talking. And one of the things that I still carry with me that really tied it all together is one of our instructors had this big like ball of yarn, and she had us all standing in a circle, and then she gave one person like I'll call it the dumb end of the yarn, right? The start of the yarn. Mm-hmm. And she said, loosen it up and make a comment you learned in the class and throw it to somebody else in the class. Okay. Mm-hmm. And before you know it, there's like this spider web of yarn between these 12 people. And she goes in the middle and cuts. So everybody has a piece of yarn, right? And it's to represent everything you've gone through in that class and everything you learned. And she says, put it somewhere where you're going to see it. It hangs in my office right in front of my desk. I see it every day. I remember it every day. I think about it every day. I think about the people that were in the class with me. I think about the struggles they had, how they've overcome them. I think about the instructors, and it has blossomed from there. And it just kept, I want to keep learning, and I want to keep learning. And that's what I do. I just keep learning. Am I the best at it? Absolutely not, Conrad. Or, can I put it all behind me? Absolutely not. I'm not going to lie to anybody. But let me tell you, if you don't start to become a better person with it, you're never going to get there, ever. Mm-hmm.
So did you then go see a therapist from then?
I did. I went and saw, I'm like, what the heck? I'm going to do it. So they kind of match you up because they know their therapist in there. Sure. And they know after 9 weeks, they kind of know you. So I get set up, I make an appointment, and I go in. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. I don't even know.
So what was that moment there that you said, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this. Because at first you were like, hell no. What was that moment that said, okay, I'm going to do this? Hey, over the years, I've struggled with maintaining a consistent workout. And then going into the gym, sometimes I wasn't really sure what I should be doing to achieve the goals that I want. And then I discovered Train Well. Train Well is a program that actually works to keep me on track to achieve the goals I have. So for the past few weeks, I've been using Train Well, which paired me with an actual trainer. After I signed up, I had a Zoom call with my personal trainer who set up a program that I now use every day. It was easy to sign up, and I love that my workouts are now specifically made for me. So if you have some of the same issues with being consistent and knowing what to do, Train Well may have a solution for you. You can take the quiz that pairs you with your perfect trainer, and you can get 14 days of free training at go.trainwell.net/first responder wellness. That's go.trainwell.net/first responder wellness. I've put a link in the show notes below, so you can just click on it and go right there and sign up. And you can learn how you can train well. See what I did there? Go check it out.
This course, it did such a good job at opening up conversation with people. And then even people in the class said, well, let me tell you, I've gone to a therapist already. And then you're like, oh, because what they're doing is they're normalizing it, right? Mm-hmm. And we are in the first responder community, as I like to refer to us as like the land of misfit toys occasionally. Mm-hmm. We are cliquey, right? Mm-hmm. And when we see other people that we relate to doing something, we want to either mirror them or maybe try something they're doing to see what it's all about. And I think right then and there, and it was probably about the 7th class, maybe even the 8th class, is when I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it because I have nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, here's where we come to. It doesn't cost me money. It doesn't cost me scheduling all this stuff. And it's a little bit of time. And like I said, all the time, I could sit there and give you 15 excuses why I'm not going to do it. And they're just not even valid excuses. I'm distracting away from the true question is, why did you go there and for what purpose? And I'm like, because I want to learn. I want to get educated. And you don't always know yourself until you start to really learn about yourself. Mm-hmm. And I go in there and meet with this young lady for an hour. And I'm like, she's like, well, the hour's up. I'm like, what? The hour's up already? And she's like, do you want to schedule? You don't have to. And they weren't pushy or nothing. You don't have to schedule one. I'm like, oh, I'm doing it right now. Pull up your calendar. I got my phone out. And, I did it. I went the 3 times I took it. And it was very relaxing. I think we have this, this idea in our head, what we think therapists are like. Like, you're going to go in and lay on this couch and they're going to be sitting there. That is the furthest thing from the truth. Although I know a couple therapists that we work with that do have couches there, but okay. But it was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And it opened my eyes to even growth more, into learning more, into tuning into more podcasts, into talking with people, into joining organizations, and to be vocal. I'm not afraid. I can talk to anybody about this stuff. And you mentioned something earlier, and I think it was right before the recording, but you were talking about a bed and breakfast recently that you and your wife went to. So my wife and I go to one in Ohio, it's about a year and a half ago, and we meet this older couple. They're running it. We're the only ones there, right? So they're like, breakfast is at, from 6:30 in the morning till like 8:30. So we come down at like 6:30 and we're in there talking and we're done with our breakfast and we go upstairs and my wife stops and goes, how do you do that? I said, do what? She goes, we just met them people and you're talking to them about mental wellness. I said, because it's normal conversation for me anymore. It's normal. Yeah. And I want to set that example for others. And like my father said, lead by example.
I was going to ask you, that's a good segue. How did that experience, going through this class, going to a therapist, how did that impact your leadership within the fire community?
Oh, wow. Again, I'm humble and I try not to measure like successes, but, again, like we talked about earlier, bringing you up here, bringing some other speakers up, open up these lines of communication, getting the PTSD 911 movie up here and getting that pushed out there and getting people to see it and to normalize the struggles because they truly are normal. So it's like anything else. When you're comfortable talking about things, then you're going to talk about them and you should not hold back. We are more relatable to people than we want to believe. And it doesn't matter what race, creed, sexual preference, religion. It has nothing to do with any of that. It doesn't. We were standing in a classroom the other day and I was talking to somebody. I'm like, one thing that everybody in this room has in common is what? Maybe about 70 people in here. She's like, no, what? I said, we all have mental wellness, concerns, issues, stories. We all do. Nobody can say they don't. Nobody can say they don't. And when you can make that normal conversation about it and you know how to segue in there without being offensive, right? Like I'm not going to go, hey, Conrad, how are you? How's your mental health today? It's not like that. Yeah. It's just a conversation. And then, when you build these friendships and relationships, you have a baseline for people. So, I used to be the one to say, hey, man, how you doing? And Conrad, how you doing today? I'm doing all right. Oh, my throat's a little scratchy. But here's what I started to say. What's your battery level at? Because they have to quantify it. They have to say, 50%. 50%? Why is it so low? And then there's a conversation, right? There's that conversation. Let me tell you, I learned by a lot of people's conversation. And a smart man once said a statement to me, and I use it all the time. And I think it would be something that I would hope that the listeners today, take with them. And it's do not suffer in advance. And if it sounds very simple, and it actually is very simple. But I think the more we talk about it, the more we could wrap our minds around that and be aware of the triggers, right? We know what the word trigger means. You could think of a trigger right now, put you into a tailspin, right? And then you have to learn how to break that state. And I've learned methods with that. And, a lot of the same people I do in this level of education, and I talk with them all, and they're phenomenal people, and they get on people, and bring on guests to talk about things, and it just keeps expanding and expanding, and it's just great to see. It really truly is.
So how important is it for you now and the people that you lead to, okay, the organization may not always provide what I need to for my mental health and wellness. How important is it for you as an individual to focus on that first? And you mentioned earlier that the most important person in your life is is me. You know, so is that should that be a priority for every individual in your organization?
Yes, I absolutely. And I challenge all your listeners, and I challenge you too, Conrad. Like, go ask somebody that you care about, who is the most important person in your life? Just ask it. You're probably going to be surprised at what you hear. But in all reality, it is the person you're asking the question to. And I think when you say that, then that conversation starts to blossom a little bit, because when you are that most important person, you have to be good. You have to be good up here. And if you're good up here, then you're good at home. And if you're good up here, you're good at work. And then you start to resonate that with people around you. And then you are leading by example, right? And again, it's not 100% foolproof. And it's not, but we get involved with these, whether it's at home, at work, our church group, our bowling league, it doesn't matter. This acronym I heard from a class, and I use it all the time. I hear people in my office talking about it, whether they're at a scene talking about it or whether they're on the phone talking about somebody. It's Q-tip, like what you clean your ears with. And I have one of those taped on everybody's workstation at work. Q-tip means quit taking it personally. All right. And think about it. Again, I try to pick up these things that are very simple but have a powerful meaning. And people are going to be, what do you mean quit taking it personally? Again, when you're taking it personally, you're wasting time. The wasting time is going into that dump truck, into the file cabinet, into that trash can. And at some point in time, you're going to stop and look at it and go, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why do I take that? And, the questions, people don't like to ask why. I'm struggling. Well, why? And I don't know. Well, if you're struggling, there's a reason. So can I help you with that? Can we talk about it? Or do you want to talk about it? And let me tell you, more often than not, that conversation happens. Very few times that I've ever asked that question to somebody, they're like, no, none of your business. Actually, I don't think it ever happened, to be honest with you. I don't think I've ever been told off, because it's not like I walk up, hey, Conrad, happy Thursday, you want to talk about your problems today? It's not that, Conrad. It's that conversation and just general communication with people. And then you just start to learn. And I know you know that, because you talk about it all the time as well, right? You do.
Yep.
So
what do you do on the daily to maintain your focus on you and taking care of you?
Well, first of all, I try to practice the whole couple of things we talked about. Do not suffer in advance, quit taking things personally, and be where your feet are. And you have to keep telling yourself that if you want to follow it. And when you see that work, you're going to keep doing it. And then when people come to you because you're leading by example, they're going to have a tendency to talk with you about more things other than just work-related things. And it doesn't need to be in detail. It just needs to have a conversation and then put things into perspective, because it's not – I think what happens a lot of time, Conrad, when we start talking with our peers and family about things, and I think more on the peer side, it almost seems like it's a one-up. Like, so maybe you get somebody to open up to you, like, that fire that killed that lady really bothered me. Well, you know what? I had 15 fires and ladies got killed in, and it's almost like you're keeping score, right. And that's a hard, because that's the nature of the community we live in. And I think sometimes there's power in silence, a lot of power. And sometimes it's hard for us to do because we're helpers. We have that helper personality. And if you just say to somebody, hey, what's wrong today? And just sit there and give them a minute, 2 minutes to respond. Don't keep interjecting. It's like I talk about when we go to interview, witnesses or victims of fire and explosion scenes. Most of our interviews are interrupted within the first 30 seconds by the interviewer. And I think it's a common thing that we all deal with. I think our mind's moving at a speed, but our mouth sometimes moves a little bit faster. And I don't think it's on purpose. I think we just want to help. And, just taking time to put down what you're doing. Like if somebody comes, my office door is always open. You want to come in and have a conversation. You want to shut the door and have a conversation. You want to leave it open. I'll push myself away from my desk. I'll dim my computer. I'll put my stuff down. Let's have a conversation. Well, I don't want to hold you up. I said, I have all the time in the world for you today. Because if you want to talk, that's the most important thing that we need to do right now.
Do you think that's the problem in some places in leadership, that they sit in their ivory tower behind their desk and don't have those communication times?
It is. I'm a bottom up kind of guy, and anything we do, we have a tendency to lose our mind on things at fire scenes because, fires are inherently destructive. And then what's not damaged by the fire, fire crews have to come in and do what they call overhaul, and they could damage some things, which takes away some of our advantages we have to try to figure things out. And I kind of relate that back. So rather than me go to the chief of the department and say, hey, you need to train your guys on this, we start training people, like cadet wise, right? So train them future leaders, because that's what we need to do. If you want to change the culture, you change the culture with the group of people that are changing. Millennials, a couple of the other generations, they're more in tune for the change than I hate to say older generation because people get offended, the more seasoned generation. And again, you can't always hold them accountable. I know we want to, but you can't always hold them accountable, because if they didn't have the training in it and there's no training going on, then how do they know?
Right. You don't know what you don't know.
You don't need a leader. You don't need to be a chief of the department to be a leader. You don't need to be a chief of a department to get a mental wellness program in place. You don't. If you lead by example, people are going to know they can count on you. I may not have all the answers you want, but I'm going to tell you something, Conrad. I am very, very proud to tell you that I'm a resource-getting dude. You need something, you come here, and if I can't give you direction, we are going to figure it out together. Guarantee you, I will not let you fail, because failure is not an option. It's just absolutely not an option. And I think that's the way you have to look at it. You talk about all the time. You break your leg at a fire scene. Everybody knows you got a broken leg. Everybody wants to come cut your grass, make you food. But God forbid you say, man, that call screwed me up. Oh, what are you going to do about that? Or he's different now. Or it's just weird. I think the stigma is breaking. I think the culture is changing. And I don't know at what pace or how fast. Who's measuring it? Is it measurable? I don't know. But it comes down to the same thing, that you have to be confident enough, right? Open enough, progressive enough to want to make a change and not be afraid to talk about it. Because when you're not afraid, and it's contagious. And I've seen that. Our department is about right around 300 people. So we're 911, fire marshal, fire academy, EMA, EMS, and hazmat. So the biggest chunk of our department is 911. My son's a 911 dispatcher. My nephew's a 911 dispatcher. And I know some of the struggles they've gone through, and they're still in that growth phase where they're trying to figure it out. And, I relate to them. I'm not going to go in there and tell them, you need to do this and you need to do that. I'm going to say, listen, there's a lot of things available to help you through here. But you have to take the first step. You have to want to go and make a difference in your own life, because you are the most important person. And whenever you start to address it, you're going to see them relationships that you have with other people become stronger. You absolutely will.
What would you say to that organization, that leader, that chief of the department, who says, you know what, I want to get something going here. I want to get something started here. What should I do first?
Well, I think if the chief at least has that conversation, that's a major step right there, right? And if you have that conversation, there's going to be people in your organization, without a doubt, that will be willing to start to put something together. If you want to make a difference, let's make a difference. And I think that those chiefs need to see that in their workforce, no matter who it is. I don't care if it's somebody that has 6 months on the job and they want to make a difference. Let's get them with other people that have that like-minded behavior and thought process, and let's start to make a difference. So the chief doesn't even have to do the footwork, but he has to be bought into the overall process. And again, it's positive. You got to keep it positive, because the negative stuff's not going to work. You know, if you keep blaming people for it not working, it's never going to work. Never.
I mean, like you said, when you were going down, you know, when you were making a decision, what do I have to lose?
Nothing.
Yeah.
So here's what you say to people, Conrad. Let me ask you a question. Mike, Joey, Sandy, Conrad. What would your life look like with less stress, less aggravation, less whatever? How do you answer that? Oh, it'd be crappy. Nobody's going to answer it.
Right.
There's nobody going to answer it that way. So with that being said, I have a couple ideas for you that could help you get there. Would you be willing to try them? What do we always say? You can lead a horse to water. You can't make him thirsty.
Yeah.
Right? You can't make him thirsty. But let me tell you, if you do it in a positive light, that horse is going to be drinking some water.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Don, you are making a difference. You are a difference maker in your community and within the first responder community. And so I'm going to give you the final word. What would you say to those first responders out there who are sitting in their vehicles or sitting in the bunk room listening to this with their earbuds in and wondering what's my life gotten to?
I think I'll make it short, sweet, and to the point. First of all, you have to acknowledge that you want to make a difference in your own life. That's the first step you have to do. The second step is you have to understand, truly understand that you are the most important person in your life. And with those two things said, you move forward and you reach out, and there's so many resources to get people over the hump. Again, I asked you a few minutes ago, what would your life look like without all the stress, aggravation, hatred, animosity, grief? Just what would it be like without it? And that's the way you start that conversation, and then you work towards that goal. It's not easy, but it's not hard either. You have to want to make a difference.
And we'll leave it at that. Don, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your friendship and your support. I really appreciate it.
Conrad, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate everything you're doing. Keep up the good work, and I'm always a phone call away, my friend.
A big thank you to Don for his honesty, his vulnerability, and for the work he's doing to lead from the front, not just on the fire ground, but in the mental wellness space for first responders. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this episode, it's this: you don't have to carry it alone. And healing doesn't make you weak, it makes you stronger. Don reminded us that help is out there and that conversations save lives. And sometimes the first step to getting better is as simple as saying, I want to make a difference in my own life. If you're a chief, a leader, or someone who wants to see your department do better when it comes to wellness, take that first step. Open up the conversation, empower the people around you. You don't have to have all of the answers. You just have to have enough care to start. Hey, and if you need a tool to jumpstart your conversation, I recommend the PTSD 911 documentary. Don has used it in his department, his agency, and he's using it very successfully to open up those conversations about wellness and mental health. So you can order it today. In the month of June, you can order it at a 20% discount. Go to ptsd911movie.com/toolkit and order the toolkit today for your agency. And you can watch the film today and get access to all the other resources in the toolkit. That's ptsd911movie.com/toolkit. And as always, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being a part of this community. And please remember that you are not alone. And if you need someone to talk to and don't know where you can turn, you can always dial 988 for help. Until next time, be well, take care of yourself and those around you, and go out and do something great in the world.